My husband's first love came back from abroad, and suddenly, I didn't exist in my own home. So I showed him what his home looks like without me in it. Carlo and I had been married 8 years. We had 2 kids, Bo and June. Carlo worked as a regional sales manager and traveled 2 or 3 days a week, which meant I handled bedtimes alone, mornings alone, sick days alone. Carlo had told me early on about a woman named Lena, his first serious girlfriend in college who moved to Madrid after graduation. He said it took him a long time to get over her. 8 years into our marriage, Lena moved back. She took a position at a consulting firm 20 minutes from us, and Carlo mentioned it casually over dinner one night, said they had reconnected briefly online. The first time they met for coffee, I didn't think twice. The second time, he changed his shirt before leaving the house. By the 4th or 5th time, I had stopped counting. He started mentioning her name constantly. Lena said this about the European market. Lena learned to cook Spanish food while she was abroad. Lena picked up Portuguese too. Isn't that impressive? He talked about her at dinner like he was introducing a new character into our story, and expected me to be fascinated. He told it like a man pulling photos out of a wallet, like he wanted me to look. One night after the kids were asleep, I told him the frequency of their meetups was making me uncomfortable. He told me I was reading into it, that Lena was just a friend, that I had nothing to worry about. He said I was being insecure, that he married me, not her, and that should be enough. He said it the way you tell a child the closet is empty. Then things started shifting. He missed Bo's first swimming lesson because he and Lena were having lunch and he lost track of time. He came home one Saturday morning after telling me he was going for a run, and his hair was still dry. I asked where he went. He didn't look at me when he answered. Lena came to our house once. Carlo invited her without asking me. During dinner, she asked Carlo if he ever thought about what would have happened if she had stayed. She asked it directly in front of me, with my children 3 feet away. Carlo smiled and said he used to think about it all the time. That night, I told Carlo what she asked was disrespectful. I told him his answer was worse. He told me Lena didn't mean it that way. He said I should be more confident instead of treating every woman in his life like a threat. I told him I wanted him to stop seeing her. He told me he wasn't going to cut off a friendship because of my insecurity. The problem, he said, was in my head. I stopped arguing. Not because I agreed, but because I understood something he didn't. He had already made his choice. He just hadn't said it out loud yet. I contacted a lawyer the following week. Josiah's office was small and plain. A desk and 2 chairs and a window that looked out at a parking lot. He told me what counted. Missed events, canceled plans, lies about where Carlo was, every time he chose her over them. He said I should write it all down with dates and keep it on my phone where Carlo wouldn't look. I started the log that afternoon, Bo's swimming lesson, the Saturday run that never happened, every canceled plan, every missed bedtime, every lie. The list was longer than I expected. About 2 months in, Lena invited Carlo to a networking dinner at her firm. He wore his best suit and left the house at 5:30 while I bathed both kids alone. At the dinner, he tried to insert himself into conversations with senior staff who weren't interested. Lena pulled him aside at the end and told him he had embarrassed her, that she had invited him to compliment her professionally, not to perform. Carlo told her he was just being himself. Lena said that was exactly the problem. He came home quieter than I'd ever seen him, didn't mention her, just sat on the couch and scrolled his phone like the whole night never happened. But I saw the crack. For the first time in months, she wasn't the main character of his evening. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I had already called Josiah the week before. Carlo thought I was folding laundry and packing school lunches. I was packing something else entirely. The next day, he doubled down. He sent Lena a long apology text, and I know because I watched him retype it on the couch for 20 minutes, backspacing like he was drafting a cover letter. She responded coolly, said she was busy for the next few weeks. No warmth, no reassurance. He latched onto it like she had given him a maybe instead of a no. He started checking his phone every few minutes, putting it down, picking it up again. He forgot to sign Bo's permission slip. He left a load of laundry in the washer for 2 days until I had to rewash it. The next night, Bo came into the living room holding his puzzle box, the one with the big trucks, and walked right up to Carlo and said, "Daddy, can you help me build this?" Carlo didn't even look up. He said, "Not right now, Bo. I'm busy." Bo stood there a second, holding the box against his chest, then turned and walked back to his room. Carlo wasn't busy. He was refreshing his messages. I added another entry to the log. That night, I called Sabine, my oldest friend, told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she said, "You've been making excuses for him longer than he's been making excuses to you. When are you going to stop?" I told her I already had. Over the next 2 weeks, while Carlo traveled, I made copies of the mortgage documents, insurance policies, the kids' medical records, their birth certificates. I opened a separate bank account. I started routing small amounts from my paycheck into it. Carlo never noticed because Carlo never noticed. Sabine helped me find a 2-bedroom apartment 20 minutes from the kids' school. I toured it alone on a Tuesday. Bo and June would each have their own room, but I wasn't ready to move yet. Carlo still had one more chance. I waited until a Thursday night. The kids had been in bed about an hour. I made pasta, nothing fancy. I sat across from him at the dining table and watched him eat for a minute, really looked at him, and tried to find the man I married somewhere in his face. I wasn't doing it to trap him. I wasn't doing it for Josiah. I was doing it because some part of me, the part that still remembered the guy who held my hand in the hospital when Bo was born, needed to know if that person was still in there. I put my fork down and I said, "Carlo, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Is there anything going on between you and Lena that you haven't told me?" I kept my voice even. No accusation, no tears. I left the door wide open for him to walk through. All he had to do was tell me the truth, even part of it. Carlo stopped chewing. He put his fork down. For maybe 2 seconds, I saw something move across his face, the real words almost forming, his mouth opening slightly. Then his jaw tightened. He looked down at his plate. When he looked back up, the moment was gone. He said, "I already told you. She's just a friend. I don't know why you keep bringing this up." Then he picked his fork back up and started eating again. Just like that. Like I'd asked him if he wanted more bread. I sat there and watched him chew. I nodded slowly. I said, "Okay." Not okay as in I believe you. Okay as in I have my answer. Something I had been holding on to for months finally let go. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It felt more like setting down something heavy that I'd been carrying for so long I forgot it wasn't part of me. I finished my dinner. I washed the dishes. I went to bed. The next day, Paige walked up to my car in the school pickup line. Paige was another parent I was friendly with, our kids in the same class, on a first-name basis but not enough to call on weekends. friends. She had a look on her face like she'd been going back and forth about something. She tucked her hair behind her ear and said she'd seen Carlo at a restaurant on Saturday with a woman, sitting close. She said she almost didn't say anything but kept thinking about how she'd want someone to tell her. She said it fast, like she was trying to get it out before she lost the nerve. I just nodded and said I appreciated her telling me. She blinked, like she was waiting for a bigger reaction. I gave her a small smile and the line moved. That Saturday, Carlo had told me he was visiting a client 2 hours away. He left at 8 in the morning and didn't get home until 7 at night. He didn't call the kids once. I drove home doing math in my head and opened the log, took a screenshot of that Saturday's entry, and forwarded it to Josiah with a note. He lied about where he was. I have a witness. Josiah replied, keep forwarding, useful. That evening, Carlo walked in whistling. Actually whistling, like a man without a single worry in the world. He kissed Bo on the head and ruffled June's hair and sat down at the table like a man who had everything figured out, like the ground beneath him was solid and always would be. I served dinner. Bo told a joke about his teacher mixing up 2 kids' names, and I laughed because his delivery was perfect. I felt nothing toward Carlo. Not anger, not sadness, not even disappointment, because disappointment means you still expected something. What I felt was clarity, clean and sharp. I knew exactly what I was going to do. 2 days later, Carlo came home from a meeting with Lena and paced the floor. He said, Lena says she's thinking about moving back to Madrid. Her old company offered her a position. I said, okay. He stared at me. He said, that's it? Just okay? Over the next 2 days, he hovered. He asked me how my day was, something he hadn't done in weeks. He even cooked breakfast one morning, eggs and toast. But his phone was always in his hand, screen up, lighting up with messages he glanced at and looked away from. Carlo wasn't suddenly remembering he had a family. Carlo was panicking because his fantasy was about to get on a plane. I was the safety net. I had always been the safety net. The difference now was that I knew it, and I had already cut the ropes. Carlo's parents arrived on Friday. His mother hugged me and held me by the shoulders and looked at my face and said, you look tired, sweetheart. Is he helping enough? Saturday morning, Carlo grabbed his keys and said he needed to run a quick errand. He was gone an hour and a half. While he was out, his mother walked into the dining area and said, where did Carlo go? For 1 second, I felt the pull of the old habit, the instinct to cover for him. I had been doing it for so long it was almost a reflex, but I was done. I told her plainly. Carlo had been spending a lot of time with a woman named Lena, his ex, who had moved back. I'd asked him to stop. He told me I was being insecure. Odette's face changed slowly. She picked up her mug and set it down without drinking. She said, how long has this been going on? I said, months. Then she said, where are my grandchildren right now? I said, in the living room with your husband. She nodded. Good, because when my son walks through that door, he and I are going to have a conversation. Carlo came back smiling, his hair slightly damp from rain. He called from the hallway, hey, sorry that took so long. Light and easy, the voice of a man who thought he was walking back into the same house he left. He stopped when he saw his mother sitting at the table with her arms crossed, his father by the counter staring at the floor like there was something written on the tiles, and me leaning against the sink with my arms folded. His smile dropped like someone flipped a switch. He said, what's going on? His mother didn't move. She said, sit down, Carlo. He didn't sit. His mother said, your wife just told me about Lena. I want to hear your version. Carlo's head snapped toward me so fast I thought he might pull something in his neck. He said, you told my mother? I said, you told me there was nothing to tell, so what's the problem? He turned back to her and ran the same script he'd been running on me for months. Lena was just a friend. They were catching up. I was overreacting. His mother let him get all the way to the end. Then she said, you missed your son's swimming lesson to have lunch with this woman. Is that something a friend does? Or is that something a man who has forgotten his priorities does? Carlo blinked. He said, Mom, this is between me and my wife. I don't need you getting involved. That was the wrong thing to say. His father, who had been silent the whole time, who had been so still you could almost forget he was in the room, finally spoke. He said it the same way he might tell you the time. When your wife is raising your children alone while you chase a woman who already left you once, it stops being between just the two of you. Carlo's face went deep red. His father looked at him, really looked at him and said, I didn't raise you to be this man. Carlo's eyes went glassy. He looked at me. He was waiting for me to step in, to be the buffer the way I always had. I gave him nothing, not a word, not a look. He was on his own. That's when Bo appeared in the doorway holding his blue truck. He said, why is everyone sad? I scooped him up. Carlo reached out and said, come here, buddy. And Bo pulled back. He didn't cry or yell. He just leaned into me and looked at his father and said, you said you'd play with me on Saturday and you left again. Just a fact. The way a 5-year-old says anything. Carlo's hand dropped to his side. The room was silent. Carlo went down the hall to the bedroom. Through the door I heard him say, I can't do this right now. My parents are here. Just give me a few days. He was on the phone with Lena. His parents left Sunday evening. His mother hugged me at the door and whispered, whatever you decide, I support you. I will make sure my son faces this. Monday morning, after Carlo left for work, I called Josiah and told him I was ready. I signed the filing papers that afternoon. 3 days later, Carlo came home and told me Lena had accepted the position in Madrid. She was leaving in 2 weeks. He looked up at me and said, I think I made a mistake. I think I let things go too far with Lena. I should have listened to you. 6 months ago, those words would have cracked me open. Now they landed like a coin dropping into a dry well. I said, Carlo, I need to tell you something. I filed for separation. You're going to be served by Friday. He stared at me. He said, what? Then he said, you went behind my back? I said, you've been going behind mine since Lena's first coffee date. The difference is I'm being honest about it. He paced. He listed every promise. He would cut off contact. He would go to counseling. He would take fewer trips. He would be home more. He listed each one like a bullet point on a sales pitch. He was making a sale. I wasn't buying. I said, Carlo, every single one of those is something I asked you for months ago. You told me I was insecure. You told me the problem was in my head. You don't get to come back now that she's leaving and act like I'm your first choice. I won't be your consolation prize. He sat back down. Slowly, he put his face in his hands. He never stopped waiting for Lena to come back. Our whole marriage, every year, every holiday, every bedtime, I was the life he built while he waited for the life he wanted. And now, that life didn't want him either. The next morning, my phone buzzed all day with his messages. Guilt 1 minute, blame the next. I forwarded every single one to Josiah. By the end of the day, there were over 20 in his inbox. The next afternoon, Carlo picked up Bo and June from from school without telling me. He had picked them up maybe 3 times in their lives. He took them for ice cream and made sure I knew he was having a great time with the children I was supposedly trying to take from him. I called him and told him to bring them home. That night, he sat the kids down on the couch and started telling them everything was going to be fine, that Daddy wasn't going anywhere, framing me as the one breaking it apart. I crouched between them and said, Mommy and Daddy both love you very much. That's the only thing you need to know right now. I called Sabine that night and told her about the school pickup. She said, you need to move faster. The apartment was ready. I told her Thursday worked. Wednesday night, I packed the last box in the bedroom closet. Old journals from before I met Carlo, a few framed photos of the kids at the beach, the ivory shoes I wore to our wedding that I'd kept on the top shelf for 8 years. Carlo appeared in the doorway. He looked at the suitcase, at the empty hangers, at the bare spots on the dresser where my things used to be. His face did something I hadn't seen before, not anger. The face of a person watching something end and finally believing it. He leaned against the doorframe like his legs couldn't quite hold him up. He said, please don't do this. His voice cracked on please. Just a small, quiet break, like a branch that's been bending too long. For 10 seconds, I felt the old pull, the one that kept me in this house through every missed bedtime. Then I remembered Bo standing in the hallway with that puzzle box, holding it against his chest, walking up to his father with all the trust a 5-year-old has. I remembered Carlo not even lifting his head. The pull let go. Carlo started crying, real tears. He said, I know I chose wrong. I know I put her first. I know I made you feel invisible in your own house. I will spend the rest of my life making that right if you let me. I stopped packing. I stood up and turned to face him. I said, Carlo, do you remember the night I asked you to be honest? I gave you every chance. I kept my voice calm. I didn't accuse you of anything. And you picked up your fork and kept eating. That was the night I stopped being your wife. Everything after that was just logistics. He closed his eyes tight, like he was trying to shut the memory out. Then, slowly, like all the strength had left his body at once, he slid down the doorframe and ended up on the floor with his back against the wall and his head hanging forward. He didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. I zipped the suitcase shut. I picked it up and carried it past him. He didn't try to stop me. Thursday morning, I woke at 5:30. I got the kids up, dressed, and fed. Carlo was sitting at the table when I came down. He hadn't slept. Same clothes from the night before. Gray skin. He watched me zip Bo's jacket and buckle June's shoes. Quietly, he said, can I at least help you carry the boxes? I almost said no. Then I looked at Bo watching us. I said, fine. Carlo carried the boxes one at a time to the car. He loaded them into the trunk in silence. He stood at the back of the car with his hands at his sides. He opened his mouth, reaching for some final pitch. Nothing came out. I put the car in reverse and I drove. I did not look at him in the rearview mirror. Sabine was waiting at the apartment. Bo ran inside and found his room with a picture of a truck on the door and shouted, Mom, there's a bed! June found her crayons and started drawing. That afternoon, Josiah called and told me Carlo had been served. The process server said he stood in the doorway reading the first page for a long time. Carlo contested primary custody. The hearing was held in a small room on the second floor of the county building. Old carpet smell. A long table. Josiah next to me with a folder 2 inches thick. Carlo across from us in his best suit, the navy one, the one he wore to Lena's networking dinner. He didn't look at me. His lawyer opened by saying I had unilaterally removed the children from the family home. He said the separation was driven by unfounded